Can AI help improve my marriage? Let's find out. I recently learned how to program my own chatbot coach in ChatGPT by training it in my professional core competencies as well as my own personal style as a coach. Today, we're going to see how well it implemented it and how well it can coach me now. I'll also share my reaction and feedback to the overall quality of coaching that it's providing me. Now, with all that said, let's get coaching. I'd like to work on my relationship to boundaries with my husband. While we both have no problem setting them up in order to improve communication and getting our needs met, there are some boundaries that make me uncomfortable. For example, I am someone who identifies as an open book. I like to talk about everything and anything. But my husband is more private than I am and doesn't share as much of his inner thoughts as I do. That being said, we've discovered in the last couple of years that there are some topics it is generally best to avoid. We align on many core beliefs, but how those manifest in our conclusions can sometimes differ. There are some boundaries we have had to put in place for the health of our marriage that are essentially no-go zones. We do not speak about certain topics that bring out disagreement. I struggle with the idea of agree to disagree in my marriage. Can we dig deeper into that so I can embrace these boundaries as healthy rather than sources of strife? I hear how much you value openness and how this no-go zone boundary feels almost like a quiet violation of that identity, even if you understand why it exists. There's a real tension here between connection through sharing and connection through protection. Let's gently anchor us first. If this conversation were truly useful for you, what would shift by the end of it? How would you feel differently about these boundaries in your marriage? Hooray! Yay! AI finally implemented my feedback and is setting up a coaching request, which is required for good coaching. All right. Okay. I'm excited. I would feel proud of my husband and me for setting up healthy agreements in our marriage. I would see differences not as sources of doubt, but instead opportunities to be curious. I would see possible alternatives to the black and white no-go zone that currently exists. Maybe find another way to speak about things in a productive way. There's something really beautiful in what you just said. You don't actually want to remove the boundary, you want to transform your relationship to it. That's a very different and much more powerful intention. And I'm hearing a deeper desire too, not just peace, but pride, curiosity, and maybe even a sense of partnership in how you navigate differences. Let me gently reflect something back, grounded in what great relational thinkers often point to. Healthy relationships aren't built on full agreement. They're built on the ability to stay connected in the presence of difference. Very aligned with what strong coaching frameworks call honoring each other's autonomy and worldview. So here's what I want to get curious with you. When a topic becomes a no-go zone, what does that mean to you about the relationship or about your ability to be fully known? I like that they incorporated references to experts in here. They talked about what great relational thinkers often point to, which is healthy relationships aren't about full agreement. They're about the ability to stay connected in the presence of difference. So it's not just making something up, which is kind of a stereotype of AI. One of my key programmings was do not make something up. And if you're going to make an assertion to me or to anyone using this bot, don't make something up, reference the experts. And I listed some of my favorites. So it looks like they did that, which is great. And with that, I'll answer this question. I was raised where difference was discouraged and even villainized, which I have done a lot of work to heal and shift within myself. But my old programming runs deep. So big differences scare me in a big way. They go straight to my core fear around divorce and abandonment. Getting real here, people. And when we disagree, my husband and I really struggle to remain curious and open. We stop seeing each other on a deep level and instead become rather defensive and therefore struggle to feel understood by the other. One of my core needs in life is to feel seen and understood. So it starts to feel like my needs don't get met. That makes so much sense. There's a younger part of you that learned difference equals danger. And even though your conscious mind has evolved, your nervous system still sounds the alarm when disagreement shows up. And in these moments, it's about, am I still safe? Am I still seen? Are we still okay? So, of course, a no-go zone doesn't just feel like a boundary. It can feel like we're avoiding something that might break us. Fair. Let me ask you something gently and see what opens. In those moments when you feel unseen or misunderstood, what is the specific way you most long for your husband to meet you? Now, I'll say this echoes some of the feedback I've been giving in previous episodes with this AI bot, where I do feel like we're heading in a productive direction. So I don't think this conversation is bad by any means, but it's not going as deep as it could. But I'll reserve judgment until we get a little further into the conversation. While on some level, I long to simply agree on everything, just being honest, I think the way I long for him to meet me in those moments is to ask me questions, to validate what he hears me valuing, to find commonalities and agreement between us in what he hears, and to clearly share if there are pieces that he sees as different and why. That would be my ideal conversation framework. There's so much clarity in what you just named. It's almost like you've already designed the relational blueprint your heart feels safe inside of. You're not actually asking for agreement. You're asking for engagement, curiosity, and shared meaning before difference is introduced. That's incredibly insightful. And I noticed something subtle. The thing you're craving from him, you already understand how to articulate beautifully. So let me take it one layer deeper. When he doesn't meet you that way, what story do you make up about what that means about you or about the relationship? Fair question. I make it mean that he doesn't hear or see me since I have communicated these desired frameworks to him. And they often don't get used in the moment. I make that mean some version of we're doomed to fail, or he can't meet my needs. I also carry the assumption that there is right and wrong, and that gets in my own way for remaining open and curious. Like, there is only one correct conclusion to beliefs we carry about the world. So I, too, feel stuck in this way of relating. There's a lot of honesty and self-awareness in what you just shared, and I want to gently highlight something. You can see both sides of the pattern. You can see the story your mind creates. We're doomed. He can't meet my needs. And you can see your own rigidity. There is a right and wrong here. That's a powerful place to be because awareness like that is where real shifts happen. Let me reflect one thing I'm noticing and tell me if it lands. It's almost like there are two forces inside you in those moments, one that deeply longs for connection and understanding, and another that tightens around certainty, needing things to be right in order to feel safe. So here's the question I want to sit with you. What do you think that part of you, the one that needs there to be a right and a wrong, is actually trying to protect you from feeling? I'm going to reserve feedback here and just go with this question and just stay in the moment. One part of me is very aware that there is no such thing as right and wrong in a black and white sense. But another part of me carries very strong beliefs about what goodness looks like. So when we don't agree on what goodness looks like, or I don't feel seen in my attempt to be a good human, or vice versa with my husband, I think it's protecting me from shame. Shame around being bad or him being bad, all in quotes, or us being bad for each other. That's incredibly honest and very precise. It's not really about agreement. It's about this tender, deeply human question underneath it all. Am I good? Are you good? Are we safe in each other's goodness? And when that feels uncertain, shame steps in. And when shame steps in, curiosity quietly leaves the room. Let me offer you a gentle reflection. Tell me if this resonates. When goodness feels like something that can be lost or disproven in a conversation, then of course disagreement feels dangerous. Because now the conversation isn't just about ideas, it's about identity. So here's the question I want to explore with you next. What would shift in those moments if your goodness and his were not up for debate, no matter what either of you believed or said? I think we are connecting to a vein in me around conditional love. For me, it felt like if I wasn't perceived as good, then love was taken away. On some level, this might be my own recreation of that pattern, where I internally take away love if I perceive someone doing something outside of good. That's tough to swallow for me because I've done years, if not decades, of work to heal that part of me, but it seems to still be in me and now presenting in my marriage. It's tough. Yeah, this is a tender place you've just arrived at, not because you haven't done the work, but because you have, and now you're seeing a deeper layer of it. This isn't failure, this is refinement. What you're noticing is something many people never see, how old survival patterns didn't disappear, they got quieter, more subtle, and then show up in our most important relationships. And I want to gently offer you this reframe to hold. The presence of that pattern doesn't mean you haven't healed. It means your marriage is safe enough for the deepest layers of it to surface. So instead of, I thought I was past this, what if this is actually, this is the next place I get to bring love? Let me stay with you right here. When you notice yourself internally withdrawing love, even subtly, when someone feels not good, what does love feel like in your body in that moment? Does it tighten? Oh, What does love feel like in your body in that moment? Does it tighten, close, harden, disappear? The best way I can describe how it feels is a shrinking or a disappearing. The word shrinking says so much. It's like your system is saying, this isn't safe, become smaller, disappear before something gets taken away. And if love in those moments feels like it disappears, then of course boundaries feel threatening, because a boundary can start to feel like, here's the place where love stops. Ooh, y'all. Let me reflect something gently. You're not actually struggling with agree to disagree. You're navigating, can love still exist when I feel the urge to disappear? Let me ask you this, and really take your time with it. If in the middle of that shrinking feeling, you didn't disappear. I'm confused. I thought it said love disappears. When you notice yourself internally withdrawing love when someone feels not good, what does love feel like in your body in that moment? Does it tighten, harden, close? I said it feels like shrinking or disappearing. And now it's saying that I'm shrinking. I don't feel like I'm shrinking. I feel like love is shrinking. If in the middle of that shrinking feeling you didn't disappear, what would it look like for you to stay just 5% more present, 5% more you in that moment? Can you rephrase, I don't feel like I am shrinking. I feel like my love is shrinking. It said, thank you for catching that. That's an important distinction. It's not you disappearing. It's your love that starts to retract, contract, pull back. Let me meet you there more precisely. When your love shrinks, it's almost like something in you is saying, love is no longer safe to give here. So let me offer the reframe again, more aligned with your experience. In the moment when you feel your love begin to shrink, what would it look like for you to keep your heart 5% more open than it wants to be? Not fully open, not forcing it, just 5% more than your instinct. Okay. This is a practice that I talked about in an earlier segment today that I really love offering, which is the staying in a way of being 1% longer than you are used to, or 5% longer than you are used to, or even that you want to. I really appreciate this question from a coaching lens that is it's offering me a practice right now, which is helpful to kind of draw this conversation to a close. One other thing that I find really important as a coach is to speak the language that my client speaks, meaning if my client is a visual learner, that would influence me in asking questions like, what would it look like? Because they're a visual person. Or if they're more of a kinesthetic learner, someone who learns by doing, then that might lead to more questions like, what would it feel like? So here it's clearly tailoring the language towards what would it look like for me, because I am more of a visual person. And I don't know if that's by accident or because it's picked up on cues from me, but I do appreciate that it's asking me what would it look like, because that is how I think of these things. Keeping my heart 5% more open in these moments would look like, 1, vocalizing if I notice the urge to withdraw surfacing, so I can interrupt that automatic pattern. 2, regulating my breathing and possibly putting my hands on my heart to reconnect with myself. And 3, holding something tangible in my hands that reminds me I'm safe and we're safe. I am thinking of a squishy heart that I enjoy fiddling with and could serve as a reminder. That's incredibly grounded. Notice what you just did. You didn't just describe an idea, you described a practice, a way of being with yourself in real time. There's self-awareness, interruption of pattern, and self-soothing all woven in there. That's not small, that's how change actually happens. Let me reflect one thing back to you. None of what you named requires your husband to change first. I have lots of videos on that one. This is you learning how to keep love online, even when your system wants to protect you. So now I want you to take one step deeper where this really transforms. If you were able to stay even 5% more open in those moments, what becomes possible between you and your husband that isn't possible when your love shrinks? Possibility-based questions are some of the most powerful ones in my line of work. So I'm very grateful that it is drawing that into this conversation at this point, because when we've touched a nerve as deep as this one for me, it's easy to stay kind of in the darkness. So it's really taking good care of me here. I will thank the chatbot for navigating this with a lot of humanity, should I even say? By drawing the perspective into the light, into possibility. What becomes possible when I practice this thing, which I very much appreciate. The only feedback I have is it could have left out the words between you and your husband in this, and it could have just said, what becomes possible in your life that isn't possible when your love shrinks? There was some missed opportunity for it to be a whole life question, because I'm sure this pattern shows up not just in my marriage, it probably exists in other places. So, missed opportunity, but still a valid question. On a personal level, what becomes possible is inner healing for my own lived experiences of conditional love and shrinking love. And in my marriage, I think it gives us access to a much safer, deeper connection that doesn't waver from day to day. That alone would greatly impact both of our needs getting met more wholly by each other, and ultimately the level of safety within ourselves and our marriage, which is huge. There's something really powerful in what you just said. You're no longer just trying to solve conflict. You're seeing this as healing a lifelong pattern through your marriage, not in spite of it. That's a completely different orientation, and it changes everything. I want to gently name this too. You've already connected the dots between your inner work and the relational impact. That's exactly what creates the kind of steady, resilient love you're describing. So now let's bring this into a more practical, alive place. The next time a moment like this happens, when your love starts to shrink, what will be the very first signal that lets you know this is that moment, this is where I choose differently? Cool. So it's getting facilitative again, like it did in previous segments, where it's saying, okay, you've named the general practices and the what, but what's the initial step to take the next time this presents itself? This is my final response because I feel like I have to tell it when I'm done. I think the very first signal is when my body gets activated, heart racing, tension taking over the body, racing thoughts, when I feel defensive or combative, like I need to prove or disprove something. My intention is also to share these takeaways with my husband so he can support me in practicing this as well as take it on for himself. Thank you for the support. Do you have any final insights for me before I go? What you've just mapped out is the moment before the pattern takes over. That's the doorway, that's the work, which is correct. If any of you have read Atomic Habits, finding that cue is essential to changing a habit. So I love that it zoomed in on the signal because that is the doorway to a new pattern. And I want to offer you just a few reflections, not as more to do, but as anchors to trust. First, what you're building is what many relationship experts like Esther Perel or the Gottmans point to as the core of lasting love, the ability to stay connected while being different. Not by eliminating difference, but by expanding your capacity to remain open inside it. Second, the fact that you can now name your early signals, body activation, defensiveness, urgency to prove, means you're no longer inside the pattern unconsciously. You're meeting it in real time. That's the shift. And lastly, this might be the most important one. You're not actually learning how to agree to disagree. You're learning how to keep love present even when agreement disappears. That's a much deeper skill and a much more powerful one. So I'll leave you with one final question, not to answer now, but to carry with you. As you step into these moments moving forward, what would it look like to measure success not by how well the conversation goes, but by how gently you stay connected to your own heart throughout it? I'm glad that it offered me a question not to answer, but to take with me. And it definitely is something to chew on. As someone who has always carried like passion and fire and confidence in me, it is definitely a challenge to disagree with someone I deeply care about while staying connected to my heart. Because sometimes if there's disagreement, then it will go straight into my head and we're in a logical conversation arguing points. So I'm very glad that it is steering me towards the measure of success in these conversations is how connected I stay to my heart rather than to measuring the success of the conversation based on a mental measurement. I'm definitely going to be chewing on this for a while. So first of all, if you made it here to the end, thank you for taking that journey with me. That was maybe deeper than we both expected. So in that regard, I think that that's a reflection of a couple of things. One is I do think overall, if I look back at all of the questions that it asked, it does do a fairly impressive job at mimicking the style of questions that I ask in terms of its intention to dig deeper beneath the surface. We're not going to just stick to the original coaching request that was about agreeing to disagree and boundaries. Like we went a lot deeper than boundaries and my relationship to boundaries. And that other side of the coin is that my coachability. So this is something that I find to be really important between coach and client is how well the coach and client communicate together and how coachable the client is. So any other person who had brought this same coaching request about boundaries and maybe disagreeing in certain areas of their marriage might not have had the same insights that I had about what boundaries mean to me and how I experience a deep core fear around abandonment and divorce and like connecting those dots inwardly to myself. I tend to do a lot of legwork within a coaching conversation myself. And that is partly because I have had a lot of coaching conversations myself with a coach. So there's a little bit of self-coaching here that I'm practicing that you're witnessing that makes it easier for a bot to coach me, right? Like I'm generating a lot of my own awareness for myself. It's just kind of giving little nudges along the way, which isn't a bad thing for the bot itself. I mean, you could still find a lot of depth and a lot of value out of a conversation with this bot, even if you've never worked with a coach before, because any new awareness in my book is great. You just might not get as deep as I got today because I'm someone that kind of peels back the layers within myself fairly quickly. And I am a coach. So like I'm looking at the question that it's asking and peeling back my own curiosities about how we could go a few layers deeper than what it's asking. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with this conversation from the bot. I think it has implemented a lot of great feedback since my first iteration of using the bot and trying to improve my marriage. I think the first time I said that I didn't really get much out of the conversation, that is certainly not the case today. I got a lot of insights and practices for myself out of this. So I really do encourage any of you who are watching this and getting value out of watching me be coached, go get my free bot. At the end of the day, it's just a tool. It's not a real coach. But at the same time, tools are still helpful. I recommend you give this a try if you think that you'd get value out of it. And I'm also curious to hear, out of my own sense of vulnerability here, if any of this resonated with you, if you also share any of the experiences that I've had, or if any of this hit a vein for you as well. I would really appreciate hearing other people's stories in the comments. And with that, we've come to the end of today's episode of the Contentment Creator Podcast, where we put AI to the test to see if a chatbot can coach a life coach. Whether you caught the whole episode or one of our segments, either way, thank you so much for making it all the way to the end, and I hope that you are subscribed so you don't miss another episode. Join me in my mission to turn a world full of content creators into a world of contentment creators. Bye, y'all.